Sometime last year, the Brazilian files regarding the Activision Blizzard acquisition were released, and it gave us an insight into the games of lies, omissions, and truths being played when dealing with a nearly $70 billion acquisition. Give us an insight on how to position yourself and your opponent when competing in a sector bigger than the film and music industry combined. Give us an insight on how two Fortune 100 companies would go to battle for the majority share of a $583 billion gaming market. A console war on paper, Xbox v PlayStation. And when the files were released, there were a couple of talking points that everyone clinged to, but one stood out among the rest. One that had developers, publishers, the naturals, Xbox and PlayStation fanboys confused. And that was Sony seemed rather shook. Sony seemed rather scared. There was talk of Gamepass dominating, Call of Duty being essential to the viability of any platform. And the main line was, I quote, adding Activision games to Game Pass would represent a tipping point, Sony stated. And I believe there's truth there. Jim Ryan is known for flying, lying, and crying, but in this case, he speaks truth. Let's start again. After Microsoft's failed E3 conference for the Xbox One, where they proceeded to shoot themselves in the foot, the stage was set for Sony to take over. And with Microsoft contemplating bowing out of the console market along with their 5 measly studios, this gen was all but done. Rather than let the heads of Microsoft come to that conclusion themselves, Sony sought to give them a nudge. Sony wasn't looking for Microsoft to have a potential change of heart. Sony didn't want any Xbox executive passionate about the brand to convince shareholders that not only staying in this industry was the right move, but the best move. So Sony sought to make that decision or conclusion harder to come to. Sony sought to permanently end the trillion-dollar company's pet project turned success story. So they did what any firm would do in this situation. They used their market dominance to pick the best third-party marketing deals, doubled down on timed exclusives. They doubled down on AAA blockbuster games, all done to ensure the Xbox ecosystem remained unviable. Now, throwing the meme culture, and Xbox soon becomes the laughingstock to gamers and non-gamers alike. A product to signify failure, a product that missed the mark, a product with no purpose, a product with no games. And that's where the story should end. Xbox as a gaming console ceases to exist, and its IPs and studios are auctioned off to EA or Ubisoft. Xbox podcasters switch to Nintendo fanboys, or just become your generic talk about every game host. And the boys and girls at Sony Interactive Entertainment take a victory lap. In their eyes, a David v Goliath story. They fought off big tech. However, in 2018, Phil Spencer walks on stage and he announces the creation of the initiative, the purchase of Undead Labs, Playground Games, Compulsion Games, to add to In Exile and Ninja Theory. And what this does is, it signals to Sony and Jim Ryan, you tried, but you should have pulled the trigger not once, but 2 times. And now it's crystal clear. Phil has the whole of Microsoft behind him, and he's not set to revive the brand. He's set.
We've got a 5th studio to announce.
Microsoft purchases Bethesda.
This is one of the highest
rated studios of this generation. So now we got 20 plus studios, a wealth of new IPs, an Xbox Series X which reigns as the most powerful console ever made, a cheaper sister console in the Series S to target the casuals, those who are looking for a companion console to go along with their PS5 or PC. Now add Xcloud with the streaming service. That's a 7 billion plus potential user base. And finally, a Game Pass, a subscription service that surpasses its competitors in every shape and form. A value proposition that's just too good to pass up. A service where you can play Benedict Fox, Amnesia, Atomic Heart, Wolong Dynasty, Lies of P, Hollow Knight, Stalker 2, Ark 2, Day 1, And let's not forget the first-party games such as the next Fable, Doom, Halo, Sea of Thieves, Wolfenstein, Gears of War, Avowed, Elder Scrolls, Outer Worlds 2, Redfall, State of Decay 3, Fallout, and of course, do you understand? If the Activision Blizzard deal wasn't going through, Microsoft was already by default going to catch up to Sony. They were either going to be neck and neck or surpass them. And you might disagree with that last point. That's fine. But don't forget, nearly every new generation is a new battleground. Don't forget the generation before the Xbox One. Microsoft led for most of it. Don't forget Sony's dominance in the previous gen was due to Microsoft's inability to do the basics, to actually compete and play the game. And if you think this generation is the same, then you're not paying attention. I suggest you take a step back and just think. So to make this come full circle, when Jim Ryan says this will be the tipping point, it's not because Activision Blizzard by itself will lead to Xbox dominance. It's because of everything that surrounds the Xbox ecosystem. That's Gamepass, the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Series S, Xcloud, and the fact that Microsoft is actually competing. And if that's the backdrop, then he's right. Call of Duty will tip the scales. So if this deal goes through, they know this acquisition will make Microsoft more dominant in the PC space. They know this acquisition will make Microsoft more dominant in the streaming space. They know this acquisition will make Microsoft more dominant in the subscription space. They know this acquisition will make Microsoft more dominant. Period.
As a gamer, seeing these things happen in the market should be very exciting to us, because as Microsoft is coming in and starting to compete, and of course we see the moves being made by Sony with Bungie, this means those huge platforms move out of the way and also give new studios and new IPs room to breathe in this space. Consolidation is cyclical. Look at ABK and Sony's own history to see that. Continue to let them know what you want in a respectful way, but be excited for what's to come.